Okay. Oh, it feels good to be back. It's been it's been a hot minute, hasn't it? Um, Basically, what had happened was that uh, I was last Sunday. I helped my dad to do some landscaping on my great aunt's old property as they prepare to like refurbish it and sell it. Uh, And while we were doing this landscaping, because I made the brilliant decision of wearing these trashy old Skechers sneakers, I went and sprained my ankle. And so for the past week, I have been nursing a sprained ankle and never took the time to really. Because that's the thing is, like, even if I did sit down to try and stream, I'd be dealing with, a deep throbbing pain in my one ankle. And so rather than mess with any of that, I just basically laid myself up for a week. And now I'm kind of back up on my feet. And unfortunately, every time I've been wanting to stream, I would get asked to help out with something around the house. So I finally have time to finally sit down and stream, and we're going to do another Deer and Projector Lights. And unfortunately, I've not been keeping up on the movies because when given the opportunity to watch something, I simply put on YouTube and let it play in the background while I do other things. So we got some big ones coming up this week, though. We've got the Suicide Squad is coming out, and then Free Guy is supposed to be coming out. So hopefully I'll get the chance to see those before next week. But for this week, I wanted to do something specific. I wanted to do something very centralized, and that is to talk about Loki and review Loki, which is long past the point where, granted, there are going to be spoilers. So, in fact, I should probably put that in the header. Spoiler warning. There we go, and edit stream info. Spoiler warning. There we go. I still can't believe there's like nothing about movies or entertainment or films and filmmaking. Yeah, it's all Twitch is very odd. It's not very um, intuitive for when you want to talk about anything. When you talk about anything other than gaming or whatever, but I guess that's the point. At any rate, yeah, so there are going to be spoilers for Loki and for the upcoming a couple of the upcoming MCU projects. So I'm going to dig deep into what is confirmed, and then also give my thoughts, and then give my thoughts on the state of the MCU, hence the title. So let's head on over to the theater room, um, as I have no better name for it. So let's switch out this for now. There we go. Oh, come on. Of course. No, of course they're WebP photos. Why wouldn't they be WebP photos? Oh god. WebP, the worst extension for image files ever. God, it's just makes everyone's lives except for the site hosts miserable. Okay, so date added. And if I if I just change the extension to PNG, will that work? Does that help? No, of course not, because Streamlabs wouldn't recognize it as a PNG because it's not a PNG, it's a WebP. God damn it. It can never be easy. No, why would it be easy? Why would it ever be easy? God damn it. All right. Well, we'll hide this for right now until I can find a good Loki poster that isn't WebP, and I'll talk about my thoughts on Loki. And I gotta say, personally speaking, the Marvel Studios shows for Disney Plus have been excellent, like right on par with the rest of the MCU. It's superb television, and I think Loki is honestly the best that we've gotten from them, because the thing with WandaVision started out amazing, and then the problem the problem ended up being that they kind of botched the ending a bit. Not like terribly botched, but like it ended up being the problem that a lot of superhero properties have, which is, oh, we're going to end this with a big, you know, what's the term? Basically a big extravaganza, you know, big. It's like like ending in a fireworks spectacle, so to speak. And with Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that started off with a really interesting premise. The idea of, you know, the repercussion. That's the thing, is each one of these series has been about the fallout from the events of Endgame. WandaVision deals with Wanda losing Vision and her trying to overcome that trauma. Falcon and the Winter Soldier deals with the direct loss of Captain America and deals mainly with Sam and Bucky figuring out exactly what it is they're gonna do in the wake of not having Cap there, not having Steve there, and now Loki was specifically spun off from that one scene in Endgame where Loki from the initial Avengers movie, that split off timeline of Loki seeing the Tesseract and escaping. This is specifically spun out of that one scene. That's the only reason that scene existed in the movie, is to lead into this show. And I think I finally got a poster now. Let me see. Okay, this should work. Just gotta get it the right size. And there we go. Now we got a poster. But yeah, and this basically gives Tom Hiddleston a chance to really shine as Loki in a way that he never really got to before. Because every time he was Loki, he would get little bits of character development over the course of, you know, in the background of the movie, and the main focus would still be on Thor. And so here he gets to just completely, you know, command the screen as Loki, and he really does. And the basic premise, for those who haven't seen it yet, is that Loki, the Loki from Endgame, who stole the Tesseract and escaped, is captured by the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, who it's essentially like the Time Cops. They exist specifically to maintain a singular canon timeline, and any sort of variance from that timeline is trimmed at the, you know, nipped in the bud, as they say. And so Loki is brought in for processing when Owen Wilson enters the MCU as Mobius M. Mobius, an agent of the Time Variance Authority who isn't as willing to, he's a bit more hesitant to just get rid of Loki, like they normally do with variants, because he wants to use Loki to capture somebody who's been killing off TVA agents, and that is a secondary Loki, who it turns out to be female Loki. For those who haven't read the comics, there's a bunch of iterations of Loki over the course of Marvel canon, and for a bit, if not more than once, Loki appeared as was reincarnated at female, and in the comics is essentially gender fluid, and they do kind of hint at it, but it's not really addressed. But basically, they have a variant Loki named Sylvie, played by Sophia DiMartino, who is excellent. She's able to hold her own against Tom Hiddleston without a problem, and she's fantastic. But while that's going on, we also dig into, because that's the thing is, both Loki, Tom Hiddleston, and Sylvie eventually try to look into exactly who the Time Variance Authority is, who exactly the Timekeepers are that they answer to. Because in the first episode alone, they established that, oh, by the way, all those Infinity Stones that we just spent the last decade plus hinting at them being the strongest entities in the universe, the strongest sources of power in the known universe, yeah, we use those as paperweights. They don't mean shit here. So Loki is trying, his entire world is shattered. He gets a complete, info dump about his life, the canon version of his life in the rest of the film, seeing his mom die, seeing himself die, and seeing his whole arc over the course of the MCU. And between that and the seeing how little the Infinity Stones matter to the Time Variance Authority, he's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. What's going on in this neck of the woods that the Infinity Stones are mere paperweights to these people. And in doing so, that's where he ends up meeting Sylvie, and they sort of become dual Lokis trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And I have to say that it is entirely fantastic. Owen Wilson is great. He holds his own. You think you just bring in Owen Wilson to just be Owen Wilson, but he gets some really good character moments as Mobius, especially since he's so invested in seeing Loki become better, because he knows Loki is better than he thinks that he is, and seeing just how much Loki ends up disappointing him, but then reaffirming his idea that Loki, just who he thinks Loki is. Yeah, Owen Wilson is great. Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who you may know from all kinds of stuff. She was in probably the big thing she was in was Belle back in 2013. That was her big movie she played. It was like a period piece, and she was the star in it. And then she was one of the voices in the Dark Crystal series for Netflix. She was in A Wrinkle in Time. She was the Feather Duster in the live action Beauty and the Beast, Free State of Jones, The Whole Truth, Jupiter Ascending. She's been in a whole bunch of stuff, but never quite gained notoriety, so to speak. If you pay attention to films and cast lists, then you would know then you recognize the name. But otherwise, I don't think people know Gugu Mbatha-Raw the way they would Tom Hiddleston or Brie Larson, so to speak. Somebody who's just oh yeah, I know them. They may know her face, but they don't know her name. That sort of thing. But yeah, she is excellent as she plays Ravonna Renslayer, who is a former agent turned essentially like a judge, and she and Owen Wilson have this past chemistry that pops up throughout the course of the series, and they play off each other excellently, especially as things start to unravel about the reality of the Time Variance Authority. It really is just an excellently written series. I think, like I said, the best out of the three we've gotten so far, just because the writing from beginning to end never really like falters. Like I think it manages to hit both its beginning and its ending, whereas WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier both started great and then kind of faltered by the end. WandaVision because it kind of relied on the usual spectacle ending instead of allowing for more of a nuanced ending or a smarter ending, so to speak. And then with Captain Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think they really cut back on how interesting and gray the villains could have been in the series. The Flag Smashers. They started off as really interesting and complex villains, and then halfway through the series, they're just turned into regular old terrorists who don't matter. And any sort of interesting insight you could garner from them, and any sort of nuance is just kind of lost. And I feel like that's a mistake. I think the need to constantly have clear-cut villains and heroes ultimately did that series in, because it was at its best when there were no villains and heroes and everything was gray and nuanced. And then here in Loki, it starts off great and ends fantastically. And the ending episode is honestly, I think, its best because we get a hint of what's to come. Because in the I think we'll start getting into the spoilers now, because I don't think there's anything else I wanted to add that didn't get too into spoilers. So yeah, as the series goes on and Loki and Mobius, then Loki and Sylvie begin investigating the TVA, it turns out the Timekeepers, quote unquote, aren't what they appear. Namely, they're Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. And it turns out that the TVA was actually founded by a real deep cut from the comics, He Who Remains. In the Marvel comics, He Who Remains is the final entity in the Marvel universe before the end of time. And here, he's played by Jonathan Majors, who, if you've been paying attention to, like, casting news and anything like that, you may know as the actor who's going to portray Kang the Conqueror, another sort of, I would say, C-tier. He's pretty deep cut into the Marvel comic books when it comes to, like, named supervillains. Like, people know who Loki is. They kind of know who Loki is, and they especially now know who Loki is. They knew who Thanos was, because Thanos is basically like DC's Darkseid. You knew who that entity was. Unless you pay attention to if you watch Marvel shows, you read Marvel comics, most people aren't going to know who the hell Kang the Conqueror is. But all you really need to know is that Kang the Conqueror is a 30th century, or that far flung into the future villain whose big thing is going backwards in time and conquering things. I guess he's a bit like Vandal Savage in a way, if you know DC Comics. But his big thing is that he's from the future and he goes back in time to conquer timelines. And the idea is that the canon timeline that the Time Variance Authority protected was brought about because a bunch of Kangs from the multiverses ran into each other. And they decided that it was in their best interest to maintain a singular timeline. And by that I mean they absolutely obliterated each other until one remained. Specifically, He Who Remains. And so that final Kang maintained the canon timeline
until a certain point where he couldn't predict the future. And that's where the final episode takes place. Everything that Kang predicted up to a point happens. It happens until the final episode, and then that point in the Marvel timeline happens, and then it's up to Loki and Sylvie what happens after that. And it's a fascinating idea of the idea of canon, the idea of timelines, and introducing the concepts of multiverses into it, because we get the chance to see a bunch of variations of Loki. There's a comic book accurate version of Loki with the big horns and whatnot, played by Richard E. Grant. There's a kid version of Loki, which is from the comics. There's a Gator version of Loki, who's a lot of people's fan favorites. And there's the as they showed, there's a President Loki, the Loki who in his timeline ran for president, and they even throw in a reference to Throg, the Thor frog. It was beautiful. There's also a really neat a moment that I missed initially, but there's a moment in the third episode where Loki and Sylvie are at a Nexus event, an apocalyptic event where that timeline ends, where that part of the timeline ends, and there are no more Nexus points. And while they're at that point, Loki gets drunk and starts singing songs, and there's a point where Loki takes a shot, slams the glass down on the floor, and says, "Another!" And I missed it initially, but that's a beautiful reference to Thor and Loki. So, because there's that little joke in Thor, the first movie, where he drinks the coffee, he likes it, and his way of showing he likes it is to slam the glass down and demand another. And so Loki, being Asgardian, apparently does the same thing. And it's a beautiful moment that I didn't even catch until later. But yeah, I will say that besides Loki, the Lokis, Mobius, and Ravonna, and even Ravonna a bit kind of never really gets a whole lot of development. The other one, there's another character that is fairly prominent throughout the series, played by Wunmi Masaku, who was also from Lovecraft Country with Jonathan Majors, but she was also in Fantastic Beasts, His House on Netflix. She's been in a couple of things, but she plays one of the hunters, one of the agents for the TVA. And I feel like she didn't get a whole lot of development, sadly. It feels like they were going somewhere with her character, but it never got the chance to go there. But that's okay, because it turns out there's going to be a season 2. And I mean, WandaVision, they kind of established that this was a one and done miniseries, with just kind of leading into Doctor Strange, and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier is just the lead into Sam becoming Captain America. There could be a season 2, but there may not be. They don't really establish. Did they announce a season 2? Hold on. I know there's Captain America. There's a fourth Captain America movie, and that's supposed to star Anthony Mackie. But I don't think there's going to be a season 2 of this show. At any rate, this is the first of the series to have a confirmed season 2. And, they literally say, Loki will return in season 2. So, I mean, we got season 2 to look forward to. And I'm hyped because I'm very curious to see what other time shenanigans, what other stuff with Kang is going to happen. Because they leave on a cliffhanger that things aren't quite what they seem when Loki returns to the TVA. And that's the interesting thing about this is the first of the 3 shows where the climax is not a special effects show. It is a dialogue driven, it's basically all dialogue driven. It is just Loki and Sylvie with He Who Remains talking about the end of time, and then what they plan to do next. And and Jonathan Majors just oozes charisma. Like he manages to steal that episode from Tom Hiddleston, who has been carrying the show who's been, one of the best parts of this entire series up to that point. And then Jonathan Majors comes in and it's just like, bam, just it feels like an explosion, like a sonic boom to the face when he comes in. But yeah, this is basically the first part of an ongoing series. No clue how many seasons. And then of course, some teasing for what to expect. I'm guessing it'll probably tease and go into Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, Quantumania a bit. But yeah, I enjoyed Loki a hell of a lot. It's a fantastic miniseries, and I'm very curious to see what season 2 is going to look like. But that leads us into the state of the MCU. So we're going to change the image and give an old, outdated version of the MCU Phase 4 timeline. Remember when they thought Black Widow was coming out in 2020? The halcyon days of yesterday. In any case, I will say the Infinity Saga is unlike anything I've ever seen in entertainment. It is a once-in-a-lifetime event that is going to be an insanely hard act to follow. All the first 3 phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe have been so well thought out, and then even as they faltered and made missteps, they've been making up for it later down the line. Things like Avengers Age of Ultron and Thor the Dark World are now better thanks to later additions to the MCU. Because you've got bits in Endgame and parts of Loki that tie into Thor the Dark World. You've got bits of WandaVision that tie into Age of Ultron. They've managed to take their missteps and managed to make what, the parts that did work better by including them in other stuff, so that now even the stuff that quote unquote is bad is still, now leads into this other thing. It's a very interesting way of elevating their weaker films, because you wouldn't think that they would even care about the ones that sucked. But no, like you watch this in order and you include all of the things, and you manage to see just how interconnected this whole cinematic universe is. It's such a tapestry that they have weaved together, and it's not perfect. It's not the best tapestry you've ever seen, but there's nothing else quite like it, and every attempt that another studio has tried at it has failed miserably, because the amount of effort that goes into weaving this tapestry, even where they falter a bit, is incredible. But yeah, so now at the end of the Infinity Saga, most of the mainstays of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are gone. You've lost Iron Man. He's gone. Tony Stark is gone. And Robert Downey Jr. is out, aside from maybe some cameos here and there. Steve Rogers is gone as Captain America. Chris Evans is out. And once again, maybe aside from a cameo, maybe they'll do a flashback scene or something like that, or they'll do a voice thing for What If. Black Widow is out. Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff is out. And yeah, so like big chunks of the mainstays of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that first phase, those first 3 phases especially, are gone. They're not coming back. And I guess before we get too much into it, I will say that Scarlett Johansson, while I do think she's overrated as an actress, And I think if anybody who actually has an attraction to Colin Jost to the point to like she has, is very clearly has terrible taste in men, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is that Disney did her dirty, and Disney's trying to paint her as the bad one by trying to claim more money from the movie that Disney did her dirty on. That's the thing, is that people have been, Disney tried to play it out like, oh, look at this greedy actress trying to get more money for the movie. She's saying about theaters, but we put it on Disney Plus out of the goodness of our hearts because of the pandemic. We were worried about people going out to theaters, so we put it on Disney Plus and charged $30 for it. But that's the thing, is that streaming has been a way for studios to circumvent all of the union contracts that get actors and directors and writers their residuals that have been established in the previous mediums, like TV, like film. And that's why Quibi was such a big thing, because most of that work was non-union, because they skirted around the union rules by making every episode 10 minutes long. And yet another reason why Quibi failed is because the whole reason for its existence is to undercut unions. But that's the thing, is that what people aren't talking about with Scarlett Johansson is that Denis Villeneuve, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Denis Villeneuve, the director of Arrival and Prisoners, the one who is directing the new Dune, he had this same fight, but with Warner Brothers, and everyone was on his side. Yet when Scarlett Johansson is having this fight with Disney, now all of a sudden she's the bad one. But it's the same fight, just with a different creative entity and a different studio. And that's not to mention the fact that Scarlett Johansson was an executive producer on Black Widow, as well as its star. And yeah, the whole reason, and that's the other thing too, is that Scarlett and her lawyers would not be taking Disney to court if there wasn't precedence for it. You don't go wildly into court against motherfucking Disney if you don't have some ammo to back you up. If you don't got something to bring down the House of Mouse, then you're doomed. And they do have precedence behind them, and they do have a case. Because yes, Disney is skirting by their obligations to their talent in order to keep more of the money they earn directly through selling their things on Disney Plus. And Emma Stone and Emily Blunt are making the exact same arguments, and are also weighing their options on joining Scarlett in this case against Disney. And that's the other thing. This is not new behavior. People are acting, people can't act like, oh, how could Disney have done this? When this is exactly the kind of shit that happened to Robin Williams. For those who don't know, the whole reason Robin signed on to play the genie in Aladdin was because he was working for scale, which basically means that he was taking a lower pay cut in order, and the promise was that Disney could not monetize his character and make money off of his character that he did not see. The whole reason he was playing the genie was because Disney wanted to pay him for scale. He agreed under the agreement that Disney would not be using his character and his likeness to sell products. And Disney, being Disney, said, "Oh yeah, totally," and then completely sold the genie on everything. Robin Williams is the genie, genie, to the point that basically every follow-up movie for like a decade after Aladdin copied the whole Robin Williams, famous comedian, play side character, and that's our selling point now. And that's why Robin didn't work for Disney for years, and because they broke contract with him. They broke their agreement for him to play the genie for scale, and then they sold out on him in order to keep more of the money. This is not new behavior for Disney. They will stab you in the back if it means 5 shekels more. I guess I should not. That's a bad way of saying it. No. You know that scene from SpongeBob, where the Dutchman has where Dutchman is taking Mr. Krabs' soul, and SpongeBob says, "Yeah, well, Mr. Krabs is the best man I know." And the Dutchman says, "Yeah, well, I'd say that he would sell your soul for pocket change. I bet you my soul he wouldn't." And then Mr. Krabs takes the money, and SpongeBob has to go. SpongeBob's soul belongs to the Flying Dutchman. Yeah, Mr. Krabs is Disney. Like, literally everything that Mr. Krabs does is the kind of behavior that Disney as a company does. They're a greedy, penny-pinching, absolutely miserly organization as a company, to the point where they don't even pay their, park workers all that well, and their park workers are horribly mistreated. It's the weird dichotomy of Disney where the artistic output is some of the best in terms of like family and animation entertainment, and sometimes even just pop culture and entertainment. And yet the practices of the company are some of the worst, just miserable practices a company can have against their own employees. And how do you support the artists you want to support because they work for Disney when Disney is also doing everybody dirty at the same time? It's the strange dichotomy of Disney, where you want to support these things that you love because of the creators behind it, and yet the person funding everything is a miserable piece of shit company. And you don't know what to do about it, because what are you gonna do? Boycott them? You're gonna stop watching. You're gonna stop subscribing to National Geographic, and don't subscribe to. There are so many their fingers are in so many pies. How do you boycott the entirety of the Disney Corporation? By the way, thanks for allowing that to happen, Ronald Reagan. You piece of shit. Hope you're burning in hell. Anyway, we got off topic. Point is, Scarlett Johansson is right to sue Disney, and Disney owes her money, and bitch better have her money. Pay her what they owe her. As for the MCU, though, we're in what sports fans like to call a rebuilding year. After the events of Endgame, most of the content we've been seeing in the present of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been with the fallout of Endgame. So we're setting up we're doing the whole thing over again that they did in the first phase. Phase 1 was setting up all of the stuff. Phase 4 is, once again, setting up all of the new stuff, because the Infinity Saga is done. Now it's time to rebuild and find the next phase, next chunk of the cinematic universe. And so part of that is, and so for the most part, it's dealing with the fallout of Endgame. It's Peter losing Tony, and figuring out how to be his own independent Spider-Man without Tony, his mentor, there, and which actually works way better than we usually get with the whole Uncle Ben thing, because normally we get like a few scenes with Uncle Ben and then he's dead. We got a good Civil War, Homecoming, Infinity War, and then a bits of Endgame. We got three and some change movies with Tony and Peter. And that helped to make the moment where Peter lost Tony that much more heartbreaking. And
that I think works way better than any time they've had to do the Uncle Ben's death storyline, because so many times we don't spend any time with Uncle Ben, and then he's gone. And then we're supposed to be like, with great power comes great responsibility. But here, we get to see the relationship with Peter and his mentor play out, and then he's gone. And now what does Peter, what will Peter do? And I'm very curious to see what's going to happen next, because next is supposed to be him and Doctor Strange, which raises a whole bunch of questions. But yeah, Endgame ended on such a high note that what the hell are we supposed to do now in the MCU? Like, we've lost Thanos, we've lost the Infinity Stones. What exactly are we supposed to do with the future of the franchise? And the answer is cosmic and multiverse. We've established now that we've got we're going to have multiple multiverse-based storylines between Loki, Doctor Strange. We got WandaVision leading into that. We've got that What If show coming out, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 is going to be about the quantum verse, and it's going to be about that whole aspect of it, which means more time travel and more, multiversal things. So it's going to be a whole bunch of wild time hopping, time jumping, multiverse jumping. They're going to be introducing America Chavez, who is a multiverse hopping superheroine. In the comics, she's known as Miss America. I've only seen her in this one mobile game I play. But basically, the idea behind America Chavez is she is a kid who learns she has the power to hop between dimensions, and so she goes dimension hopping all the time. And she's going to be appearing in, I believe, the Hawkeye series before being expanded upon. But yeah, what we have ahead of us now is we've got Shang-Chi, which brings in more of the magic because we have the official Mandarin this time and not an actor playing the Mandarin. And he looks great. I'm very interested to see how the Mandarin is handled in Shang-Chi. Spider-Man No Way Home is going to bring in Spider-Man is also going to have a whole bunch of multiverse stuff because they're establishing that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies exist as part of the Marvel multiverse. Hawkeye is going to bring in Kate Bishop as the next generation Hawkeye, the way that Black Widow brought in Yelena Belova. We've also got Ms. Marvel coming to Disney Plus, which is going to lead into the Captain Marvel sequel, which features her, Monica Rambeau, and Carol Danvers all in the same story. So I mean, we're equally going multi-dimensional while also setting up what is essentially the next generation of Avengers. And that makes me think, so are we getting young Avengers? Because that would be something. That would be interesting to have the next generation of Avengers be the young Avengers in the comics. So yeah, and what helps is that now with the addition of Disney Plus shows, we have the opportunity to expand more into and spend more time with characters than just a 2-hour movie. Now we have up to 3, 4, maybe even 3 to 6 hours with these characters to establish all kinds of stuff. So just because you're a minor character, quote unquote, you may have a thing coming up. And there's also the possibility of bringing over some of the people from Netflix. There's word that Charlie Cox could return as Matt Murdock, Vincent D'Onofrio could return as the Kingpin. So I mean, the possibilities. There's possibilities that they're going to cross over with Sony's Spider-Man, Sony stuff with Venom and Morbius. So are the Sony things going to be canon within the MCU? There's a bunch of questions that are going to be interesting to look into. But as for what's to come, I did take a look at the official timeline of releases, and for the movies, the next one is Shang-Chi,
the aforementioned Shang-Chi. That's coming up in September. It's basically a kung fu movie that's going to reintroduce the Mandarin. It's going to be a very predominant Asian cast. There's hints that Abomination could reappear. Did they confirm that? Because I think I saw Tim Roth in the credits as Abomination. I know he's in the credits of one of the things. So Tim Roth is reappearing as Abomination down the line, which once again, tying back into another forgotten entry in the MCU, we've got the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. They've already had him tied in with Thunderbolt Ross, but now Abomination's back. So everything's possible, folks. But yeah, Tim Roth is reappearing as Abomination in Shang-Chi. So, no, there's not a single entry in the MCU that does not matter. Oh, God. What kind of hell have you wrought upon us, Kevin Feige? After Shang-Chi, we've got the Eternals, which is more cosmic. The Eternals were the race of beings that Thanos belonged to, which is going to beg the question, where the hell were you guys when Thanos was doing shit? But apparently they're going to come back because there's like their doppelgangers, their evil version. So they're coming out from hiding in order to fight against people like a race of beings that are like them, which I think is the point of that movie. But I'm very interested to see that, mainly because Chloe Zhao is making it, and after she got Best Picture and Best Director for whatever that movie is called, I've completely forgotten it, but the one with Frances McDormand where it talks about living out of your vehicle. I'm very curious to see how she handles like a mainstream blockbuster movie. It's going to be very interesting. After Eternals is Spider-Man No Way Home, and that's going to bring in multiversal stuff. Apparently, Jamie Foxx is going to be coming back as Electro, but not the exact same Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2. Apparently, they're going to have him dress up in a different outfit. So he could go with the green outfit. He could go with an entirely new design. It's going to be interesting, but Jamie Foxx is supposed to come back as Electro. Molina's coming back as Doc Ock. Officially canon Sam Raimi Doc Ock, as in after the events of Spider-Man 2, he managed to survive, which is going to raise a whole bunch of questions, and I'm very curious to see how that plays out. After that, we've got Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, where we got Sam Raimi coming in to replace the guys from Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill. So keeping in the horror elements, so I'm very curious to see what Raimi brings to the project. It's going to continue from WandaVision, Loki, and Spider-Man. It's going to deal with the multiverses. This is where America Chavez shows up. So I'm very curious to see how all of this plays out and what exactly this all entails. Because Chiwetel Ejiofor is returning as Baron Mordo, but apparently the idea is that Mordo is going to be still hunting down wizards, still hunting down members of the Order that Doctor Strange belongs to, but this event, this whatever's happening during this multiversal event is strong enough that they're going to have to put aside their differences, supposedly. We'll have to wait and see. After that, what I'm hyped for, Thor Love and Thunder. We're going to bring in Mighty Thor, Jane Foster, which means we actually have Natalie Portman getting something to do for once. Natalie Portman's got something to do for a change. Holy shit. Because that's the thing is, in the lead up to Endgame, the main thing I noticed about Jane Foster is just how they did her dirty. And at first I blamed Natalie Portman for it because apparently there was some interview where it said, oh, Natalie Portman doesn't like the MCU and she doesn't like it, it's beneath her. I think they made they made it sound like Anthony Hopkins said the same thing. But no, when I rewatched the MCU, they did Jane Foster dirty. I mean, women were terribly written for the first two phases of the MCU, if we're being honest. And it wasn't until like phase 3 that the female characters actually got, better. So seeing her return and do the Mighty Thor course of events. Apparently, Thor is going to be there with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and there's hints that they could be introducing the Greek heroes, which are canon in the Marvel universe. There's a Ares, there's a Hercules, there's Zeus in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just as there is in DC. So we could be getting Hercules and Ares coming out, because Ares I know often gets used as an as like an evil version of Thor, and I know that there's a recurring character of Hercules in the Marvel comics, so we could be getting those guys coming in. After Thor is Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and not much is known about this one. Apparently they could... there's no word on what the story is, or who the villain is, or even who's taking up the mantle of Black Panther following Chadwick, how they're going to handle Chadwick's untimely passing in the course of the, in terms of the Marvel canon. Because, I mean, that's the interesting thing, is that What If is going to be Chadwick Boseman's final performance, his final credit, after his final live action credit is going to be Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. His final official credit is going to be playing T'Challa in an episode of What If. And I'm very curious to see how that plays out. But I'm also really interested to see what they do with that staple of characters and who exactly is going to take... I mean, the big one all the fans are predicting is Shuri is going to take up the mantle, because Shuri is the one who took the mantle in the comics. But I'm very curious to see what they do with with the story and those characters, because most of the cast is returning. Winston Duke is returning as M'Baku. I can't remember names now. Lupita Nyong'o is returning, and I can't remember her name, but the woman who plays Okoye is returning. Apparently, Angela Bassett is returning as well. We've got Denai Guerrera is returning as Okoye. Daniel Kaluuya is going to be returning as W'Kabi. Letitia Wright is returning as Shuri, and Florence Kasumba, one of the Dora Milaje from... I think she played Dora Milaje. Apparently, she's a Dora Milaje in Falcon. Yeah, she's one of the members of the Dora Milaje. She appears in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and she also played Shenzi in the Lion King remake. Interestingly enough, but she's returning as well. They've added Michaela Cole, who I believe is from Lovecraft Country. No, she is from I May Destroy You on HBO, Black Earth Rising, Chewing Gum. So a couple of things. Lots of TV. Minor stuff, and then minor film, and then lots of TV. But they haven't said who she's going to play. And they haven't mentioned any sort of hint at what they're going to do in terms of the storyline of the comics. They haven't even mentioned if they're going to... Oh shit! That just reminded me. Loki advertisement is playing on IMDb, and there was a thing that people were talking about after Loki, where in the final episode, the chamber where He Who Remains stays has this gold like veining running through it. And it's a reference to kintsugi, which is a Japanese pottery where they use molten gold as a way of repairing pottery. And so you've got these veins of, these cracks of gold in with the rest of the pottery. And it's this beautiful art form. But He Who Remains' own chambers and his mansion is rebuilt from the pieces of the Time War. And it's a metaphor. It's a secret hidden metaphor that, unless you know about kintsugi and can recognize the reference to it in the scenery in the background, you would never realize it. It's beautiful. I love stuff like that. At any rate, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is going to be interesting. I'm very curious to see what exactly they have planned. If they're going to have it be that T'Challa passed away after the events of Endgame, or what exactly they're going to do. Because that's going to be the big question. After Black Panther is The Marvels, which is going to be the follow-up to Captain Marvel, and specifically after Ms. Marvel, the Ms. Marvel series. There's no word on who the story or who the villain is. Quantumania. Then comes Quantumania, where we've officially got Kang the Conqueror, and apparently Yellow Jacket is slated to return from the first movie. And then what I'm interested in seeing is if they're going to finally make... Because that's the thing is, in Endgame, they established that Scott Lang's daughter is now at least a teenager. And in the comics, Cassie Lang plays a character known as Stature. And she's a member of the Young Avengers, and actually even took part in the original Civil War in the comics. And I'm very curious to see if they're finally going to introduce Cassie Lang as a hero character. Because I knew as soon as they mentioned Cassie Lang in that first Ant-Man movie that eventually that's a possibility down the line. And I'm wondering if we're almost there. So we'll see. Guardians Volume 3, this is over the course of like the next 2 years right now. But yeah, Guardians Volume 3, there's no confirmation on plot. We know, I don't know if Thor's going to return for this one, or if he's just going to leave off in Thor Love and Thunder. But the only hint we have is they teased Adam Strange, who was another member of the Guardians of the Galaxy from the comics in Volume 2. So who knows what we just know that Chris Pratt is on. That's going to be the final time Batista plays Drax. The lady who plays Mantis is coming back. What else? We've got Nebula's returning. Oh yeah, Elizabeth Debicki is returning as Ayesha, the head of that golden race of aliens that they fought in Volume 2. Gamora, Groot, Rocket, Mantis, and then Kraglin, Sean Gunn's character from the Ravagers, is part of the team. No word, doesn't look like Hemsworth is playing Thor in it, so he may be out by Thor Love and Thunder. But yeah, I'm guessing the idea is that they're going to continue on and introduce Adam Strange. And then maybe he'll take Drax's place, because Dave Bautista is ready to kind of take a break from action movies for now, which is good for him, because I mean he's like in his 50s, I want to say late 40s, early 50s, and trying to do action after doing wrestling for so many years, yeah, that does things to your body. I can imagine he wants a break. And then finally, after Guardians Volume 3, the final officially announced Phase 4 movie is with no confirmed date of release or even cast and crew, but they have confirmed that Phase 4 supposedly will end with the introduction of the Fantastic Four, which makes sense. I mean, end Phase 4 with the Fantastic Four. It's a perfect sort of end cap for the whole thing. As for, there's definitely some interesting choices people have been throwing out there for Fantastic Four. The big one people always go for is they want John Krasinski and Emily Blunt to play Reed and Sue Storm, and I feel like that's a bit too on the nose. You're just gonna hire an actual married couple to play Sue and Reed. Like that feels kind of like lazy, honestly. Who I've been saying should play Reed Richards is John Cho. Now John Cho is already at that age where if they're doing old Reed Richards, he'd be perfect. But if they're doing young Reed Richards, one of the ones people have been bringing up is William Jackson Harper from The Good Place, and I could absolutely see that. So I'm very curious to see how they bring the Fantastic Four to life, because then maybe we'll actually get a good Fantastic Four movie for once. Uh, but in terms of other stuff they've announced, we've got the Mahershala Ali Blade movie, which I love that story. They've got basically the story, if you haven't heard it, is Mahershala Ali loves Blade, and he was actually wanting to play Blade once Marvel got the rights back to it, but he figured, they're not gonna want me, they're not gonna hire me. Like, especially this was like right before his Oscar win, or right around the time of his Oscar win, and it's like they're not gonna come for me for Blade. Meanwhile, Kevin Feige and the people over at Marvel Studios are like, okay, we got Blade back. We should get somebody. And like, we really want Mahershala Ali, but man, he's a big shot. He just got an Oscar. He's not gonna want to do Blade. And so they finally get the chance to meet, and they ask Mahershala Ali if he wants to do Blade, and he's immediately like, yes. And so like, I love that story because it's just like, here's these two like, oh man, they're not gonna want to do this thing. Oh, but I really want to do it, and they're not gonna want to do it. And then finally they realize, oh no, we both wanted this to happen. It's a nice little bit of serendipity in the universe, and I love it. So I'm very hyped to see Mahershala Ali, who was a minor villain in the first half of Luke Cage. So he's kind of playing it, but I mean, at the same point, like, we've had actors play two different roles in terms of like minor appearances in the MCU before, so it's not like unprecedented. The same actor played two different roles, I should say. But we've also been confirmed that Deadpool is continuing, thanks to the Fox buyout by Disney. Deadpool is going to get a third movie, and it is going to be R-rated. So, we saw a little hint of Ryan Reynolds returning as Deadpool in that teaser for Free Guy, and that was fun. That was just a cute, because I mean, you got Taika Waititi, who plays a character in the MCU, and Ryan Reynolds, who plays Deadpool, who just got added to the MCU. So let's sell this thing that they're making by tying into the fact that they're part of the MCU. It was cute. And just like Deadpool reviewing trailers, just something stupid Deadpool would absolutely do. But I'm curious how much carryover from the Fox X-Men stuff is going to be. There's going to be. Because because I think if nothing else, the Deadpool characters, the Deadpool exclusive characters like Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Colossus and the kid from Hunt of the Wilder People, that kid, he was just in Godzilla vs. Kong as the dorky sidekick for what's her name from Stranger Things. But that kid, I would like him to return. I think if they kept those guys and then recast the rest of the X-Men and then just made the joke be that Deadpool recognizes that they're not the same X-Men, that'd be fine. And then, of course, the aforementioned Captain America sequel where, because it would be a dirty move to have Anthony Mackie finally take up the mantle of Captain America and then get nothing else. You never get to see him again. So they have announced that there is a Captain America 4 in the works with Anthony Mackie as Cap. So I'm very curious to see what that's going to look like. And then, of course, the X-Men movies are on their way. They haven't established if there's going to be a singular line of X-Men movies or if there's just going to be individual mutant movies, which, honestly, I think if they tried to go with a mini Avengers sort of thing where they have the mutants divided up between other movies. So, like, you have a Wolverine movie. You have some that deal with Storm or something like that. Like, there's possibilities for doing the X-Men that isn't just singular X-Men movie. And in fact, doing what Fox did is actually kind of limiting. So they may expand it out and have just the Mutants franchise, where it's just like, this takes part of this is the part with the mutants in it. And they may appear in other MCU stuff, which is going to be interesting, because that's the other thing. In the wider picture of the Marvel Universe, the mutants don't make any goddamn sense. Because what does it matter if you got your powers from genetics versus you're Captain America and you got them from a drug thing, or you're Tony Stark and you got your powers from science, or you're Bruce Banner, you got your powers from an experiment gone wrong, or you're Thor and you were just born with powers. Why does the mutation matter? Why does that make the mutants second-class citizens when that just means that's another way of getting superpowers like the Avengers? And I have it. I have an idea. Hear me out. Initially, nobody cares about the mutation. It's just a thing they discovered by science. Something about the events of Endgame happening, something about some event in Phase 4, some of the the multiversal stuff. Something happens, it causes mutations start appearing. At first, nobody cares. First, it's just like a scientific anomaly that they start studying. Then, conservative reactionaries and traditionalists and the religious right, all of a sudden AM talk radio is riddled with people decrying mutants as the enemy because they're against God's will, they're against nature, they're an abomination. You got the same, and then it is literally a metaphor for the way that those people talk about trans and gay, how they talked about gay people and how they currently talk about trans people. You literally tie it in to the fact that the reactionary right is so outraged at their very existence, and then to really play into the whole idea that it's a metaphor for the plight of gay, trans, minority, various other minority groups. You have it be that the quote-unquote good guys, the stand-ins for Democrats and specifically liberals, is we vocally support you, and then we'll do nothing to defend you. And then it's up to parts of the Avengers to finally take the stand and say, we are here for you, we protect you. But maybe they don't do that initially because the reactionary crowd has made it toxic to basically come out and support people's right to exist. I doubt Disney has the balls to do that, but that is how I would handle the X-Men. Now, I would make it just that they are a thing that started happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They just started it. They start to realize maybe this wasn't maybe this thing has been here longer than we thought, and there's all the stuff that is initially just people recognizing the science behind it, and then all of a sudden the reactionary crowd immediately turns and makes it toxic to even talk about, so that centrists and liberals don't want to take a stand lest they lose that entire crowd. And then you have stand-ins. You take making the J. Jonah Jameson and Alex Jones type, you make him the bullhorn for all of the stuff that's anti-mutant, the same way he's against Spider-Man. If Disney had any balls, they would absolutely do that. But I don't see that happening. I think it's a wild idea to bring in the X-Men. I think that would be the perfect way to bring in the X-Men to the MCU. As for the series, What If is coming this month. In fact, I think it's coming a week from tomorrow. And that one looks wild. I've always loved that sort of Elseworld style of like, ooh, what if this happened? I love that sort of diverging path and imagining how this character would have happened. The aforementioned final performance of Chadwick Boseman. And because it's hosted by Watu the Watcher, which is going to be fun. Which is a fun way to bring him into the MCU as basically the host of the Twilight Zone for the MCU. So I'm hyped for that. Ms. Marvel is coming up after What If. I think that's supposed to be later this year. and it's going to be interesting because I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea how they're going to introduce her. She's technically an Inhuman, so are they going to tie into the Inhumans show, or are they going to just introduce the Inhumans through her? But it's going to be a story about a Pakistani Muslim family living in America, and I'm very interested to see how they handle that. After that is Hawkeye. There's going to be some more. There's going to be some more stuff with Ronan. Why can't I remember his name? Clint Barton's time as Ronan after Infinity War. And then there's also going to be Haley Steinfeld playing Kate Bishop. And there's going to be they're introducing another character in that series that's supposed to get her own thing, another minor character in the Marvel Universe. This is also supposed to be supposedly where Kingpin's going to show up, but I don't know if there's been confirmation of that. After Hawkeye, though, is one I'm very interested in, and that's Moon Knight. Moon Knight has become a bit of a cult favorite character as a secondary Deadpool, because he's got dissociative identity disorder. One of his personalities has a very, very chaotic energy about him. You know, there's a famous panel where Moon Knight is walking down a set of stairs and he's like, "Dracula, you son of a bitch, where's my goddamn money?" And then there's one where he calls Avengers Tower with Spider-Man and Captain America there, and he's like, "Dracula's not an Avenger." What? That son of a bitch. It's just like, how much of that is going to show up? But at the same point, like, Moon Knight is this cult favorite because he's so well written during stints of his run, during stints of the comics run. And he's also going to be played by Oscar Isaac, which is hype. I'm here for Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight. The big question is, though, because he has DID, how well are they going to write that? How are they going to portray dissociative identity disorder? And can it be better than goddamn Split? Because I swear to God, Split set back people's perception of DID an entire century. So that's the one thing I'm worried about with Moon Knight. Otherwise, I'm hyped for it. She-Hulk is coming to the Disney Plus. Tatiana Maslany is going to be portraying She-Hulk. And then you've got Mark Ruffalo returning as... I'm guessing this is current full hulked out Hulk for this one. And then you've also got Tim Roth returning as Abomination for bits. And you've got... I saw that they had Jamila Jamil from The Good Place as sort of a main physical antagonist. She plays a character from the She-Hulk comics that is like she's called Titania. She's like a super strong villain. And then the other thing it's going to be is like legal. It's going to be a legal procedural at points because She-Hulk is a lawyer. And even as She-Hulk, she still practices law. And I love it. I'm very hyped for that. They're going to do a Secret Invasion on Disney Plus, which is going to follow up Captain Marvel and the teaser from Far From Home. And I'm very curious to see how they're going to adapt that, because in Secret Invasion, which they tackled in the second season of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes really well. It was a whole season-long event, and it was really well handled. And I'm very curious to see how exactly they're going to handle it now, because they've already set up the Skrulls as a refugee population. So how are they going to handle Secret Invasion now if the Skrulls are actually just a refugee population? Are they going to say that this refugee population is then also an evil species? Like, I'm very curious to see how they're going to handle this. We've got the holiday special, the Guardians holiday special, which is just a full-on play-up of the Star Wars holiday special, and it's going to take place between Thor 4 and Guardians 3, and I'm very interested to see what the hell that's going to look like. They've also announced Ironheart, which is about Riri Williams, who's going to, I'm assume, take over the Tony Stark role. And then there's going to be an Armor Wars series, which is going to center on Don Cheadle as Rhodes, as Rhodey, and War Machine, and him finding out that Stark Tech is falling into the wrong hands. And that brings up the possibility of like all of these various other Iron Man villains that they haven't tackled yet, like the Crimson Dynamo or things like that. I'm very curious to see what that looks like, because Armor Wars was also another thing from the comics. So, and then of course there's going to be a Wakanda series following up Wakanda Forever, which supposedly is going to be an origin for Okoye, which begs the question: is Okoye, could Okoye become Black Panther? You've got really 4 choices for the next Black Panther. Shuri's the big front runner. You've also got Lupita Nyong'o, she could become Black Panther. You've also got Okoye, she could become Black Panther. And then you've got M'Baku, who already vied for the position of Black Panther. So, I mean, you've got 4 choices ahead of you. Who knows what it could be? Well, who knows what it looks like? But as for what I'd like to see from the MCU, I mentioned the Young Avengers, which got a stature. They've already introduced Speed and Wiccan in WandaVision. They hinted at them, and there's a possibility that they could come back as mainstays in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Cassie Lang was also a Young Avenger, I believe. America Chavez, I believe, was also a Young Avenger. Kate Bishop, like all of these younger characters from the Marvel comics: Riri Williams, Kate Bishop. Wiccan and Speed. They could very possibly introduce Hulkling into this, and if that's the case, then they have an obligation to show Wiccan and Hulkling hooking up, because god damn it, we did not get our first openly gay Marvel marriage in the comics for Disney to puss out when it came to introducing them to the MCU. But yeah, we've got these younger characters that could form the new Avengers. And so the next Avengers could be the Young Avengers. So you've got Riri Williams as the Iron Man role. You've got Kate Bishop for Hawkeye. You've got Yelena Belova for Black Widow. You've got America Chavez, Miss America, popping in. She could take over for Cap. You've got Cassie Lang in there. You've got all of these characters that are stables of the Young Avengers, or they could be that Ms. Marvel has been a Young Avenger. So I mean, you've got these characters who could very well play the Young Avengers, as well as there being the mainstay of Avengers led by Sam Wilson as Cap. So that could be something. The other thing I've been thinking of, and I think I'm onto something, because a couple of the mobile games I've played, there's been the characters of the Dark Avengers. Now, for those who don't know, in the comics, the Dark Avengers were creation of Norman Osborn, i.e. Green Goblin. At one point, Norman Osborn said to himself, I'm going to make my own shield with blackjack and hookers. And so he created an organization called Hammer and declared himself the Iron Patriot. The official Iron Patriot from the comics was a creation of Norman Osborn, not the U.S. government. Although it kind of makes sense without Norman Osborn of who else would be the Iron Patriot. But in that, so for Hammer, the Avengers for them were Iron Patriot, Ares, Bullseye was their Hawkeye, even had the purple suit and everything. Yelena Belova was their Black Widow, and they had who was it? Juggernaut. Juggernaut was their Hulk, and Venom was their Spider-Man. And so you had this Dark Avengers built out of Norman Osborn to tackle the Avengers. And now stay with me. Stay with me on this one. In Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we were introduced to U.S. Agent, and he was met by the Contessa character played by I can't remember her name. Why can I not remember her name? Shit. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and she's a character who has worked not only for S.H.I.E.L.D. but for Hydra and for this other villainous organization called Legion. So you have a character who could be either good or evil, depending on how they write her. She's already talked with USA. She's already playing this Nick Fury role of gathering Avengers because she's got Jack Walker, U.S. agent, and at the end of Black Widow, she's talking to Yelena Belova. Now, who's to say that she doesn't come in either Shang-Chi or She-Hulk? Come up. Who's to say that she doesn't come walking up to Abomination and saying, "Hey, how's it going? I'd like to talk to you about this thing I'm doing." And next thing you know, we get ourselves a Dark Avengers. I'm very curious to see how that plays out. So we'll see if, following the Hawkeye series if I'm onto something or not. But I'm just saying that's a possibility. Personally, I would love to see more integration with Spider-Man and Sony. I have no idea what deals are in place, but I don't see them playing nice because why would corporations ever play nice and do things for the benefit of the fan? But Morbius I think would be a perfect Blade villain. So bringing him more into the MCU fold would be good for Blade. Having the Spider-Verse characters show up in the MCU the way that Michael Keaton does in in Morbius. So like, just like hints that they're connected more than just just having this layer of like they're connected, even if it's not like officially connected or something like that. I'm just tired of Sony trying to play copycat. I would rather them work with Marvel Studios to have really good stories, and then we just all got good things from Marvel. That would just be nice, But I don't see nice things happening because, God forbid, we ever have nice things. I think we're gonna I think this is a great chance for the way that Iron Man, Thor, and the Guardians got a chance to become mainstays. We could get Shang-Chi being like a mainstay of Marvel fandom. More opportunities for like Ms. Marvel or Riri Williams. These minor characters who are getting some fan love, but not a lot. Moon Knight. Introduce Moon Knight to the wider audience. So, I mean, this is why I've been saying I want Devil Dinosaur. For those who don't know, Devil Dinosaur is a character in Marvel Comics, which is a goddamn giant red Tyrannosaurus. Apparently he hangs out with Nick Fury. He hung out with Nick Fury, and now he's hanging out with Moon Girl or something like that. I'm saying I just want MCU Devil Dinosaur at some point. Give me, I want that. I need it in my brain. And then, other than that, like, I think expanding into various other genres would be good for them. Doing like westerns or noir styles, so it's not just action movies all the time. Allowing for more interesting styles, legal procedural, the aforementioned legal procedurals for She-Hulk, or slice of life stuff for Ms. Marvel, or, not just sci-fi, fantasy, and action. Allow for some horror elements, allow for some other elements of the genres into the MCU to make it more interesting. I think that's definitely something that they need. That way, it doesn't matter. That way you have any number of genres available to you through the MCU, not just always an action movie. Same way in the comics. There's all kinds of genres you can find in the comics. I do think they should also break away from the formula. Not every climax has to be a laser beams and explosions. I think allowing for more nuanced climaxes would be good for them, because at least not, sometimes it works great. Big blow it up thing in the sky, sure, why not? But at the same point, like, after 20 years, it's getting kind of old. It's been 15 years. It's actually been more like 15 years. But as we're pushing towards 20 years of the MCU, I think we can do more than just big flying thing explodes in the sky. Or, people in spandex shoot lasers, things blow up. We can do more than that, I think. And then, of course, just keep embracing the weird, because comics are stupid. Like I said, give us Devil Dinosaur, give us a Howard the Duck movie, or a series even. Just, there's so much weird shit in Marvel Comics. Why limit yourself to just the generic, just the regular stuff? Bring in some of the weirder idiosyncrasies of the bring in, like, Arcade, or something like that, and then make it like the fucking Running Man as a Marvel movie. Just allow for more things, more possibilities. Disney has all the money in the world. They can do whatever the hell they want. Why limit yourself? So yeah, that's kind of the state of the MCU as I see it. We're at a crossroads as we build into a new phase, and I think allowing for more interesting, bringing in more characters from the Marvel Comics that could use some love, allowing for more interesting and nuanced storytelling, and allowing just for these interesting things to happen, while also, holding Disney accountable for crimes against humanity, such as they are. Yeah, I think the MCU could benefit from seeing the parts that do work and the parts that don't work. And if everybody's making fun of you for these formulas, change up the formula a bit. Part of the reason I love Ant-Man is it's not just a shooty bang. Because the fight scene in Ant-Man is like a shrinking fight scene where they're using frickin' Thomas the Tank Engine and stuff. Allow for interesting things like that. The climax to Doctor Strange was a time loop, and he tormented an eldritch deity by sticking him in a time loop. Like, holy shit! Like, think of weird shit like that. Allow for interesting things. Don't follow the formula to a T. Be interesting. So, we'll see what happens. I'm very hyped for What If, and I'm hoping to catch up on some more stuff for next time. But as for now, thanks for tuning in. This will be up on YouTube probably tomorrow, and I'm hoping to get back into streaming regularly so I can actually, set up a schedule. That would be nice. So we'll have to wait and see. But we'll see you later, folks. Thanks for tuning in.